Thanks for joining us today. My name is Marshana Williams, and I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Workplace Culture at REACH, and I will be your host this late afternoon morning. So before we get into introductions and a conversation, I just want to take a moment to thank our 2021 Moving Forward sponsors. See if it shows on my screen here. There we go. For their continued support for REACH and our communities. And special thank you to Walsh Construction and LMC as our sustaining sponsors. You know, the challenges of last year pushed all of us to be more flexible, more curious, and more focused. Thank you for changing with us, stretching your generosity, choosing to include REACH in your giving as we work together to keep people safe, sustainable in their homes, and respond to the needs of our community. Now, a few housekeeping. We are definitely recording this, so hopefully that's okay. We can't really see anybody else but the panelist here. But if you do have any questions, we're no longer GoToWebinar, but in Zoom, there's a Q&A function. And so you should be able to see that on the panel. Go ahead and put your question in there. You can also be anonymous if you need to, and we will do all of that towards the end as far as questions go. The recording of the webinar will be available in Spanish and Somali, so thank you, AYCO, for the interpretation support. And also thank you to Purple Communications for providing the ASL interpretation today. Welcome, Jennifer. I think we're going to try to get Jennifer here soon, so just hang tight, especially if you do need some support there. So let's get into the details. So as you know, REACH started in 1982. Just about 40 years, we support residents as they grow personally while providing solutions focused on sustainability and enhancing communities. Our work includes affordable housing, development, management, support services that increase economic stability for our residents, free home repair, and accessibility upgrades for low-income senior and disabled homeowners. So we believe community partnerships are essential to our mission, and we definitely want to highlight two partners today. Super, super excited. First partner I want to highlight is Bienestar. Bienestar is also a community development corporation and affordable housing with resident services focused on community-based healthcare, social services that are also focused on Latino and LGBTQ populations. Bienestar is the resident service provider at REACH's newest development in Beaverton, the Marianne. The Marianne offers 54 new apartment homes where the primary focus is to serve low-income families with children. Now, REACH and Bienestar have several partnerships in the pipeline. El Monica Station will bring an additional 81 affordable apartment homes in the city of Beaverton. And Bienestar will be the resident service provider, and REACH will own and operate the community. But we also in partnership with Plaza Los Amigos, which will be owned and operated by Bienestar. REACH will act as the developer on 113 apartments, homes in the city of Cornelius. So thank you so much, Bienestar, and welcome. We'll get to introductions soon. Now, of course, our second partner, African Youth and Community Organization. AYCO's mission is to serve our immigrant and refugee communities. And at the beginning of this year, we collaborated to bring life to their 8,000 square foot future dream center in Northeast Portland. And we're continuing to work together to make sure that the crucial programs remain an asset in the community that they serve. So we're really excited to have you. I'm blanking on all the slides here, please excuse me. And thank you to these amazing organizations who are joining us today to have this awesome, candid conversation. So let's introduce our panelists. Panelists, feel free to start your screens, all your beautiful faces. And I'm gonna stop sharing here. And let's just each take a chance to say your names, pronouns, if you'd like, your role in the organization, any little small plugs. I'm going to start with the REACH team here. Alma, go ahead, introduce yourself and pass it on to the next person.
Thank you so much, Marshana, and it's wonderful to be here as part of this webinar. Alma Flores, I serve as the Director of Housing Development for REACH CDC, and my pronouns are she, her, ella. Welcome.
I am Elise Anokian. I'm the Director of Programs at REACH CDC, and my pronouns are she, her. Jamal, would you like to go next?
Yes, unfortunately, I can't open my video, can't start my video, but okay, now I can, sorry. All right, great. Jamal Dar, founder and executive director of African Youth and Community Organization, he, him.
Nathan, you want to go next?
Buenas tardes, everybody. My name is Nathan Teskey, he, him pronouns. I'm the executive director of Bienestar. I'll kick it over to Erica.
Hello, buenos dias. Erika Calderon, Housing Director of Bienestar. Pronouns are she, her, ella. Thanks, Reach, for having us.
Yeah, thank you. This is so awesome and so exciting. Let me still trying to get my questions together. I have so many questions, but also feel free to ask questions of each other. This is really just, like I said, a candid conversation. So as we, talk about community development, right? We're all in the community development field. What does that mean to you? And what does that look like when it's done well? And why is CDC so crucial? And I want to get this question to our partners first, to definitely kick us off with that one. So anyone want to start?
Yeah, I can start. I think what it means to me is that to create a community that is resilient, a community that has a place they call home, and a place that is safe, and their children, their parents, their elders, the young, the people experiencing disability are feeling all welcome. That's what I would say. I do believe that creating that some sort of a back in society, it resonates the community vision and development where you create and have children and families that can last longer and be robust, face many challenges. But if you look at the other side of, that lack of foundation, lack of community center, the crimes will be increased. The displacement will be extremely hard. The challenge that we face, not only in community, but also society, is greater than what we can even imagine. And I think one of the reasons that we exist is that coming to these countries for, being through for the last 10, 20, or maybe 25 years, the community that we represent are bringing a different vision, a different, some sort of a background showing that resilience, living through the challenge, living through civil wars, living through refugee camp, and coming and calling this place as a home, the ultimate home, where they can, their children and themselves can thrive. Their background doesn't have to be any some sort of hate or discrimination or that kind of challenge, but then they definitely had a different traumatized in a civil war in society. So I think combining that experience and that talent package creates better and a stronger community. Thank you.
I can jump in too, Marshana, if you like. Yeah, when I think of community development, I think of, there's the movement of community development corporations like REACH and Bienestar that really started in the 1960s in cities around the US. And today we think of CDCs as mostly about affordable housing. And obviously that's true, like we develop affordable housing. But when I think of community development, I think of all the aspects that go along with building housing and community as well. So how the site is designed, what are the amenities that are made available to the residents? What are the services that are made available to the residents? And then how does the project relate to the larger community around it, right? And so we're certainly, when we develop at Bienestar, we try to hit all of those points to the greatest extent possible. And if you have a site that allows amenities, like in the project in Cornelius that we're partnered with Reach on, we're able to build a multi-purpose hard surface court that's covered for year-round activities, for example. So that's really community building, because not only do you have people living in safe housing, safe and stable housing, but you also have the community creating aspect of people getting together, recreating together, sharing meals together, that sort of thing. And then hopefully also connecting to the larger community around them.
If I could just add to all these wonderful discussions around community development, I think for the work that I have the pleasure of doing for REACH, community development is so integral to ensuring that we are focused on the people first, and have that lead us in the direction of where we need to go. And that can take many shapes depending on geography, demographics, seniority, all sorts of factors that play into it. But for me, it's that meaningful engagement that helps inform future development and the neighborhoods and the community that are being developed out of a singular building, if you will, because it is creating community and it's going to be part of a neighborhood. And it's so important that the neighborhood, to Jamal's point, feel welcome when this new building and this new population is going to be moving in, and you start way before you even think about a development. So building those partnerships and the trust in the community is so integral to community development.
Yeah, it's really about knowing the needs, right? Even before you even come up with the idea, we want them to be a part of the idea from start to finish. Anybody else want to jump in on this one before we head to our next question? Good. Okay. Oh, Erika.
I was just gonna say I agree with Alma, but my internet is spotty, so you guys are cutting out for me. I was just gonna agree with her on hers.
Thank you. We hear you just fine. So you sound good. Yeah. All right, on to our next question. And I definitely want to direct this to Alma. So how has REACH evolved our model in housing development?
So the reason why I love this question is because it doesn't mean that REACH was doing things inappropriately before, or that it had a certain way that was wrong. My background in community development, and particularly around housing, community, and economic development, having been on the government side for over 20 years and really focused on nonprofit work, just most recently with REACH. A lot of what I bring to REACH and our future housing development is what I was trained to do and what I've done for 20 years in the government sector, in terms of really being intentional, like I said before, around community engagement, really wanting to understand what people need, to your point, Marshana, before. So really, I've just infused that type of thinking and energy into the work at REACH in future housing development, as I mentioned before, until we talk to people, until we know what sort of the issues are on the ground, because that really is the root of community development corporations. They're ground up organizations that are for the community, of the community. And that's really all I'm doing, is just wanting to partner with wonderful organizations like Bienestar and AYCO and really bring to light their needs, their community inputs, other inputs depending on the geography that we're going to be developing in, and really doing intentional work with a people-centered, I want to say even racial and social justice centered work, to really bring the voices that have been squelched for so many years, where, having been in government, I understand that it's easier for us to be the spokespeople or spokesperson for what the community needs, when really we're supposed to be listening to the community first, interpreting that, and applying and implementing into the work. So that's all we're doing these days with future REACH development. We're trying to pause. A lot of times we're forced to build fast, and we're forced to build communities without taking the time to step back and listen and learn and understand what people need before we start putting pen to paper for a design. So really all we're doing is taking the time for ourselves, understanding what the community needs, and then using that information. And when I say using, I don't mean that it's just a one-time, we're treating people as tokenized pieces of information. No, that's not what I mean. It's really that we're using that information and seeing how it applies. And later on when we're talking, I'll give some examples of what that looks like. And I know Bienestar has wonderful examples too. But really it is just, we're trying to evolve in a people-centered way that gets to a development that makes sense for the community we're serving. We're not creating a cookie cutter approach. It's going to be tailored. There are different stakeholders, different communities that we're serving that we're just really infusing into the future development of a project.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would add to that I think some of that work has to start internally, right? Like a lot of it is centered around the communities we're serving or the partners that we're serving, but it also, I think since Alma has come, I agree, like there was nothing inherently broken about what we were doing, but how can we improve? You know, how can we do better on our next project? And part of that is internally strengthening those partnerships and seeing the value in each department. It's so easy to work in silos, even within a CDC like REACH, where we have different departments doing different tasks to make it all run. But what I've really experienced in kind of this next iteration of development is starting to collaborate from the beginning, starting to have teams internally and bringing in partners and residents and all those voices sharing one table from the beginning. Whereas when I first started at REACH 5 or 6 years ago, we were brought in maybe towards the end of a project to think about what kind of services do you want to provide, or even having just kind of a standard package of services, which we still do, but how can we be nimble? How can we really listen to that feedback that we've been getting from the beginning to make buildings not that just like look great and have wonderful amenities, but those amenities are actually meeting the needs of residents? And how do we have partnerships that enhance those amenities for residents, not so much for REACH, but for the communities that we're moving into? So I think it starts internally with saying we are going to have to show up differently as REACH leadership. We're going to have to show up in a different kind of collaboration that might look, which takes its growing pains, right? And it takes us all leaning in differently. But I've seen that over the last couple of years really start to change, not only externally how we're partnering, but also internally how we're partnering, which I think is part of that growth and expansion, and hopefully, really centering the individuals who are going to be living in housing rather than centering REACH or centering partners, but centering residents. So.
And what I really like about what you and Alma are saying is this idea of being intentional, right? We're intentional in how we show up in the work, and we're intentional to make sure internally we're reflecting that externally, which leads to permanent change, right? It's not just about the checkbox. And I think that's what makes this process and this growth kind of beautiful, is just seeing those pieces come together. I think I'm going to pass the next question to Alma to pass to Elise.
Yeah. So, well, I do, because we started late, Marshana, I do want to step back a little bit and ask the question about how Bienestar and AYCO came to partner with REACH and sort of the backstory, because I love hearing it. I'm sorry, I'm being selfish here, but I just love it because that's what gets me up in the morning. So could I ask our partners, what is our backstory together, y'all?
Nathan, should we go first? You and I, we tag team the story together.
Sure, we can tag team and then let Jamal go. The backstory for us really is a relationship of trust that Bienestar and REACH have developed over the years. Even before, I'm almost 5 years now at Bienestar, but even before my time, there was a relationship between the two organizations and they were talking to each other. I think for us, when we realized the magnitude of the opportunity with the Metro bond funding that was coming, and I assume most of the folks who are listening in know what that is, but it was new funding for housing in the Metro Portland area. We knew that we were going to need to partner with some folks to be able to really do everything we wanted to do. And so we just started talking, and we talked to Dan, who's the ED, and we talked to Alma. And there's just a level of comfort and trust that was developed over time. And I would also say in our case, we were able to kind of come to an agreement on multiple projects so that it was not just a one-off. I think for us that was significant. And not to cast aspersions on other big organizations, but we do often get invited to do kind of one-offs. Recently, we were invited to join an application 2 days before it was due to be the resident services provider by an unnamed larger organization. And that doesn't work. That's not a relationship. That's just like, hey, let's check the box on an application and put your name on there so we can sort of, get points on our application. And so Reach doesn't operate that way. And that's why we've developed such a good relationship. Erica, you want to jump?
Yeah. What I remember when we came and talked to you, Alma, and I'll try not to get too emotional. I'm glad I can't see who's on the call, and I just feel like I'm talking to you guys, is because I came onto Bienestar and Nathan had a real sit down conversation with me and let me know where we were as an organization. And being one of only 3 Latino focused organization CDCs in the state, hearing that the doors were getting very close to shutting on the community, talking back to community CDC and who we serve as Western Washington County. He kind of just asked me, like, are you in this fight with me? Do you want to take this challenge? I know I'm going to ask a lot of you, and there's going to be a lot of tasks we're going to have to work on together that maybe we're not accustomed to us doing right now in our professional career. And I was like, yeah. So I got into this crazy world of development, which I've come to love. And we met with a couple other developers, and they were talking to me about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, how they had learned a lot, and kind of just sat at the table with us and said, what do you need? And I feel like I would speak up a little bit more. I'm a little bit more direct than Nathan. And I would go for it, right? Like, I'm like, I want 70% of the developer fee. We want to be owners. We want to be operators. And they would politely smile and in their own way say no. And not even to the ownership, of allowing us to be owners. And we're kind of like, well, we want to be part owners. And it just didn't sit well with me because we were coming out of the 4 years of the Trump organization administration. And I had seen at the tail end what it was doing to our properties. I had heard about ICE being on the properties. I had been hearing about the fear within resident services on our other side. I agree with you, Elise. We feel siloed a lot of the time, right? But the good thing about being so small and only one of 6 team members at Bienestar is that there was no way to silo us. We were in the office together all the time talking and trying to bring this organization back around. So when we reached out to Reach and we sat down with Alma, one of the very first questions I asked Alma was, are you going after a certain project that was in our hometown? And she had said, well, yeah, we're looking at it. And I said, we really need to win that project. And at that time, we already had a different partner. So there was no option to partner with her. And I said, I know they love you and you guys do great development work, but in my opinion, the owner operators of that project should be Bienestar. And I had that discussion, like I said, with other numerous developers. She agreed with me and she took her team off the project. And I don't know that we've ever highlighted that or said that, but to me, I think that was a turning point to be who we were really doing negotiations with, right? And that's the part where I still get teary-eyed because Bienestar got the project. And if Reach had not had decided to go after the project, I'm not really sure that we would be on an upswing, what's called an upswing right now in development. I'm not sure that we would be able to be presenting new units to our community and put the pride back into the organization to show the community we're here, we're fighting for you. We've made smart partnerships. We are thinking of you, and what is best for you, all the way from ownership to operators to decision makers. And often, a lot of times, I'm going to go off, of course, I hear people talk about partnerships and oh, well, we're a partner, but I honestly know where the power's held. And it could be a partner, but the power is held in someone else's court. And unless you really truly have the ear of, and then that person, and it's not just the person, it's the organization, because the person could leave, right? I'm going to leave Bienestar one day. I will, Nathan will leave, Alma will leave. It's what we've created in the partnerships that we feel good, that align within both communities to be we've helped each other. Reach helped me win a project. I really truly believe that they had nothing to do with it at the end of the day. So Alma, don't cry.
No, y'all are gonna get me crying. I'll cry as soon as I see a tear. I love that. Thank you, Jamal. Yeah, talk to us.
Wow, I can't match that, Erica, that was great. I want to start how we connected with Rich. Actually, it was January 21st where we were talking to other developers about the Dream Center vision 74 Glenson. And there was about approximately maybe 100 developers in the state of Oregon, especially Portland, close to roughly around that. When I received that information, it was extremely difficult for me to pin down about, which 5 organizations will be considered to begin with. So, finally was able to fund the top 5 developers, and Rich was one of them. But a little bit back, there was an email that I received from Elma talking about being advisory committee in the Washington County, building that Rich was developing. We never seen any organization reaching us and saying it. We want your voice. We want your input. We want to listen to you. We want to build a unique housing that satisfy your needs, your community needs. And I thought that was very brave to, Elma to reach us and said, can you give us your advice? And if every organization and developers are thinking about that, I think, a lot of organizations wouldn't even compete funding or whatever have you at that point. Everybody would be happy. So then the introduction was from Garu, worked for Sarah, and connected with me with Elma. That was only the housing development portion. And I had a few individuals who are, living through disabilities in our community that are homeless also. And it was an opportunity that I saw, maybe I have to talk to, Rich leadership, Elma, and start with Elma, and of course, talk to the rest of the team. But if they can help us, find a home for those individuals, and we start rolling the ball, and maybe she connected with me with her staff. I think Erica was the next person, and so on. So we knew a little bit each other, but we haven't had a strong relationship where we can trust one another. Then the process begins as far as MPOS and this development when it comes to the 74 and Glenson. And the package that we saw from the rest of the developers that we were working with for 6 months was more into naive. You want a 3,000 square footage? Well, you got it. You don't have to pay anything. Oh, what about if you're in the back of the side of the 75th and in that street? No, we want to be visible in the front and glisten. I'm like, okay, am I asking anything? We're not begging you. We're trying to be a partner. We're not your client. We're not people that you give help. But we come in to sit in this table to some sort of agree as a partners. And it was kind of like a mindset that I'm tired of it. A mindset that it contains hate and discrimination. And but at the same time, it was a lot of high hope where the maximum we would pay was 700,000. The numbers don't add up. Okay, we want to build a 4 to 3 million property that we own first day. And you're telling us that you would help us even with 700,000 and you don't have to pay anything? You think we would own or would be a tenant? It was a fishy relationship. And as we go through the process, there was other organization developers reaching us at the same time, asking us about, because we are the resident, we are here still, to partner with us. So, Nathan mentioned about checking the box. A lot of them were checking the box. And we were okay, well, what are you offering, right? The package that I heard from Dan and Elma was, first of all, a package that both the leaders and the organization were present, and they are right there meeting with us right away. Which CEO or executive director will meet with you, even pick up the phone and answer your phone? Literally, no one except Dan, right? We were talking last night, like we were talking this morning. I'm like, Dan, I want to go to sleep, right? Building that relationship kind of show us the purpose and why we're here today, right? So utilizing that vision and the mission that we have, and all people first, is what we saw Rich has, and again, we, fortunately, we're lost to the bet, and we're not, we haven't been selected, but we're happy because of the partnership. We're not sad. We're not upset. We're questioning, valid points. We have valid points, but at the same time, the relationship that we have built and the partnership that we have, like, invited from, Alma invited us in her home, like literally knowing about these people, feeling, touching them, greeting, even with this pandemic time, is a blessing. So it, at some point, I don't know when it was, I was, mentioning to Dan about, if I have to work for anyone, if I leave my nonprofit, my job at Nike, when I started Nike 23 years ago, I said, they said 50% discount. I say, sign me up. When I hear Rich and Alma and Dan, I'm like, sign me up. So I said, if I have to work anywhere, it will be Alma, right? So definitely we have a trust, and we have a purpose that we are working together. And this is just a beginning. Even the first one failed, we're going to fail, 10 times until we bounce it back 100 times more. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Jamal. That's great. Oh, Nathan, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Real quick, if I could, Marsha.
Yeah.
Just to emphasize something Jamal said about box checking. If there are any funders, I don't know I can't see who's listening. If there are any funders from OHCS, Metro, Port PHB, Washington County, anyone else who funds housing projects, this box checking thing is a real thing that's happening in our industry. And the funders have to get smarter about sniffing out the real relationships and the kinds of relationships that Jamal was describing, where they want to put your name, a name of a community organization like AYCO or Bienestar or somebody else on an application to score quote unquote equity points. It's bogus. And I'll just say, when we talk about DEI, we don't always talk about the inclusion part. And I think when you can tell when there's a real relationship is when the voices of the groups like Jamal's group are actually being included, not just their name on the application, but how can you tell their voices are actually being included? So
I would even go one step, Nathan, not just inclusion, like we're here. I don't need to be included. I need to collaborate.
Right.
You need to collaborate. That's what you're asking to do, is a collaboration.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I'll just say, for any of the funders on the participating in this, you got to get smarter about how to, if you really care about this value, you got to get smarter about the way you fund projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So we're going into this roundtable section of this conversation, and this is an opportunity for you all to ask each other questions. We only have a few more minutes left, so let's see if we can get this in 10 minutes. We can open it up for questions.
So this question goes to Elise. How does this approach to resident-centered development affect REACH? Where have we challenged our way of operating? You spoke to it a little bit earlier, but can you maybe shine a little more light on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really changing the way that we think about, I think about the Mary Ann, right? And having Bienestar doing resident services there and partnering, and it's just different. We have other properties where we have third-party services, but I feel like we're already starting to see the participation, or like the collaboration. It isn't just a handoff, if that makes sense. It isn't like, here you go, here, do this thing. It's actually like, I have a meeting after this with the Bienestar and the REACH team, where we're going to sit down and talk about, like, how do we continue this relationship? What supports do you need? Sharing ideas. So that's one thing. I think on the other end, it's when we're developing the resident services plans, it was so hard to do in the past. It was like, who do you think might live in this building? And then Elise, make a plan. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what the plan is. Like, I have no clue who's even going to live in this housing, you know? And so the idea of actually having participation from potential residents at the beginning makes it possible for me to write a resident services plan that actually makes sense and is relevant. Like, obviously we can change that, but the idea that I'm not having to just pull out of thin air what I think as an individual might be great for this community that I don't know who they are, that has been just a game changer for me. I think I have a lot of room to grow and a lot of room for improvement in the way that I approach writing those plans and the actual service delivery. But I think I'm starting to head in that direction. And by being able to sit in on those initial conversations and get to know potential residents, get to know potential partners, it feels a lot less like I'm a magician, just like kind of like making things up that might sound good and help us get funded, and rather in participating. So I think that to me is the main part. And then also just thinking about what our goals are on site. Like, what are we actually trying to accomplish and how do we resource that? And I think that the difference, and I've started participating a lot more with, even resource development and thinking like, how do we let the communities that we're serving identify what their needs are, and then how do we resource those, which I think in the past it had been kind of opposite. So I've learned a lot over the last couple of years. I still have obviously a ton to learn, and I think also just me being able, and my team being able to lean on other leaders in the community is super helpful, because I am always going to be a white person from white dominant culture who's bringing that perspective. And I have to form relationships and lean on my partners and my colleagues to be able to challenge what I'm thinking, to be able to challenge the service delivery model that I feel comfortable with, and then to be able to be flexible in what I think is best. And so I think it's those relationships, it's getting to know the community, it's being willing to be flexible, it's giving up power and collaborating. And it's really also me being invited to that table at the beginning and being asked to prioritize community development, if you think about it that way, from the beginning of how am I a part of this community and how do I get to know our potential residents and partners. So I think, yeah, you all are challenging me a lot and helping me learn and grow. And it's fun. It's hard, but it's fun. So yeah.
Yeah, at least what I really love what you said is this understanding of like really listening, right? I feel like we say we're listening, but we're really just taking input, but actually listening and giving that back in our actions and programs, which I think is so important. Does anyone else have a question of each other? I have a questions lined up, but I just want you all to have an opportunity to ask a question to each other. Yeah, okay. So the question is, what does partnership look like with us moving forward? What are we looking forward to as we just grow and change together?
I can say a few words about that. I mean, from Bienestar's side, going back to what Erica said about collaboration, we know that Reach is going to be doing another project in Beaverton, and we look forward to collaborating and being involved, and not just coming in once the property is built to be services provider, for example. And then, I think as our relationships deepen across the board, I hope we find ways to support each other. I really wish that Reach and AYCO had been selected for that project, Lisa, and I'll just say that. It seemed like an obvious choice to me, but it wasn't the choice the city made. But I just hope that we're able to build collaborations across different groups so that we can support each other, even in areas where we may not always operate. So thank you.
I think I'll just add a little bit to what Nathan says. I think it's hard to say the future, Marshawn, because I'm just like, oh man, I just got to get through the next 3 months, right? Like Oh, you want me to open and think long-term? I really like what we're doing with Reach and our other partners. You know, we have another partner, another project as well. And we're like, I think Nathan said it best to me the other day, unless you really have shed blood, sweat, and tears with the other group, like maybe you should question your partnership, right? What does that mean? Because I mean, I don't want to paint a picture of that it's been rainbows and sunshine with Reach. It hasn't, it's been hard. It's hard. I know, Alma, disappointing, but it's been hard, right? But I think that means that it's good, because on my other partnership, a very wise person told me, like, if you're not 100%, you don't get 100% what you want, Erica, and neither did we, like, that's a good deal, right? And so I think that, like, just moving forward in partners, knowing that it's not about me winning you or you beating me, it's about literally, like, what does my organization need from you? Right? Like I said at the very beginning, when I told Reach, and I didn't say Dan, it was Dan actually was the one that was like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, we're not going after a certain project, you know? But I think it's just like, that was really truly listening, because they stepped away, and those projects come with real dollars for organizations, right? None of the other people that approached me stepped away or were even willing to even entertain the idea that they were going to do that, right? So I think that as I move forward in the world and looking for partners, I really want to invite people to come to Bienestar and partner. If they want to talk, like, I just want to listen. What do you really need? Like, let's just talk about that, right? There's this weird sense sometimes that I have a card and you have cards, and we're kind of playing poker, you know, because we know we're going to have to, maybe we will go after a project, you know, at the same type of project, and we'll be against each other. That's fine. At the end of the day, I think, like, whoever does their research best on the community and knows who should really serve that community, you know, and lines up the correct partnerships within a city or even within a neighborhood, you know, is going to make, the end of the day, like, those residents thrive. And, you know, I've been in community development for 15 years now. I can't believe it. I've gotten it wrong too. You know, not just because I'm Latina, am I sitting here and saying that I know what the Latinx community wants. Like, I constantly have to check myself, and I constantly have to go back to community, right? Because I don't live in affordable housing. I've never lived in affordable housing, but yeah, I'm here helping build affordable housing. So I need to know whose shoulders I'm standing on, and I need to bring them to the table, which I try to do all the time. Now you can ask some of my other partners, you know, we actually constantly have to stop processes, because I have to, like, be like, oh wait, hold on, time out. Like, I need to check back with my team, or I need to check back with my residents, or I need to check back with our property management staff. And it's long and it's hard, and I get it. Like, it's super hard to do, but the only way that I think that we're accomplishing this partnership and it working is, I feel like this team has been very good at, like, partly to Alma, pushing on, like, mapping out timelines, like, what's the next timeline, so that we're not in such a rush to develop something, and then all of a sudden, like, oh my God, the resident service plan is due. Like, we just need to write that out. Like, we knew that a year ago, right? And we start having conversations. We start talking about how community has been changing with, even through COVID. There's been huge implications on everybody's residents and communities and the way that they're working through COVID. So I think it's just putting those timelines in place way ahead of time, so that you can work on it with the appropriate timeline to get there. And anyways, those are the partnerships I'm looking for. The ones that are willing to sit down and take that extra time to talk about these things that are really important, that are going to reflect back to the services you get the residents. Because if we just keep going 100 miles per hour, and even Bienestar could get it wrong.
I want to say, I just want to add very quickly, we want to continue building that trust. We want to continue building that bridge of success. This has nothing to do with Reach or Bienestar or AYCO. It's all about our community, the community that we love, the community that we trust. And it is a personal win to me when somebody's needing help and nobody was responding to it. The thing that we learned from the relationship that we have with Rich, it shows the kind of relationship that you want to have with individual or organization. It's a personal to me, and sometimes I could give you two great examples. There was a time that I was interviewing both Dan and Alma, and on that selecting the developer partner. And one thing that inspired me that Dan said was, if you're not in, we're not in. Simple as it, right? It's like, this is a developer want to build 150 units. They don't have to say that to AYCO. We're like, we're a small grassroots organization, help a bunch of, refugee, families who don't have no voice. Some of them cannot even vote, right? They can't even vote. They can't even express their vote, right? So a lot of that is that relationship, that deep trust that he showed. And Alma show, I think it represents who is, rich, who's rich is, right? And I think to me, I want to continue building that trust. I want to continue communicating with them. The other example is very simple. There was VU, client who really need, help. They're individual who are disabled, they're homeless. And I know that Rich has so many properties. And I say, look, is there any way we can get, housing? And, of course, the employee said, well, this is the price. And that was not what I wanted. That was not the answer that I want to hear. I know the price, but what you can do to support these, two family members, community members. I call them family members, of course, they are our family. But then I didn't get a response. So what I did, I reached out to Alma. I don't have a problem reaching out to the top, reaching out to Alma and Dan and getting a response. And then right away, I was able to connect with the leaders who were making those decisions. Within a week, those two individuals who are intellectually and physically disabled, they have home. Can you imagine? They have home. We never had that experience from any developer, any other organization whatsoever. And the third one now will have a home very soon, next week. The process is so simple that you going like to the Fred Meyer and buying a candy. That is simple as it. The application was simple. The team was, extremely happy to see my face. And even though they never met me, right? They were like, oh, okay, well, is that you, Jamal? Where is your client? And a warm welcome. Who would give us that? No one else that we saw for the last 12 years running this organization and supporting the community. So you earn our trust, especially myself, as the executive director, you definitely earn my trust. And a lot of time my community says, if I trust someone, they'll back me up. So that's what I would say. Sorry, took a little too long.
No, I love it. Thank you. Okay, so there's a couple of questions from the audience I want to get out. We can try to answer them in like 30 seconds. And then I want you all to have last thoughts and we'll say goodbye. So we have 5 minutes. I think we can make it work. So this may be a great question for Elise and Alma and of course our partners, but if someone's like getting into the conversation early is a great idea, especially if we're talking about projects for resident services. So can we give an example about what those community sessions really looked like, those listening sessions looked like?
So I can describe some of our process to date on our projects and what that entails when it's around not just residents, but stakeholders, social service organizations, other groups that feed into a particular neighborhood that we're about to go into. So unfortunately, because of COVID, we haven't been able to meet in person. So the alternative has been to do a set of focus groups with different demographic groups. For instance, we did a focus group in Spanish. We did another one in Korean and Vietnamese. And we've just tried, depending on where we're going, we try to meet the several language groups and organizations to help inform our development. We've also taken on a survey method to just really poll the community in terms of what their needs are, what they'd like to see in the development, what services, programs they'd like to see, and so forth. So the community listening sessions have been around focus groups and through a survey. And then we have what are called project advisory committees that will start before our designers, our architects are really starting, you know, when we submit for proposals or we're developing a concept, it's really high level concept to submit. But really when we start to get toward schematic design and the end of the design, we have a project advisory committee, which I consider part of our community listening session, because they're helping inform how we're evolving the design. And I want to just highlight one really important example. You know, when we heard from the community around this particular geography, you know, intergenerational housing was so important. There were a lot of immigrant refugee groups, culturally specific groups that wanted that opportunity. Through those listening sessions, and I know this project is in Washington County. Washington County did some community listening sessions with seniors and with different cultural groups too, which was also very helpful to bring into the conversation, and really highlighted the importance of factoring that into our design. So we switched our design to factor in studios adjacent to 3 bedrooms to allow dignity for that elder or for that family member that wants to stay near family for obvious reasons, but they would have their own space, their own bathroom, for God's sakes, to feel independent, but still be able to rely on family nearby. So those community listening sessions, for example, provided that level of input for our work, which was instrumental.
Thank you. Nathan, I kind of see you answering this question, but I'd love for you to answer it out loud. So the question was, you know, Nathan had mentioned earlier, how do we dig deeper in finding the partnerships that are like authentic and real and there for some permanent change? So what does that look like for funders? What are they should be looking for?
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad I got a chance to speak to this real quickly. So a few things that I think the funders could look to is, what is the ownership role for the community-based group that's being involved? Is there a real ownership role, or is it really just like, yeah, you're like, you know, on some general partner role, but you're really not in any controlling role? What is the share of the development revenue being shared? Is it like significant to the community group, or is it just kind of 10% or some kind of symbolic thing? Is the partnership one that's truly building the capacity of community-based groups? And in terms of what that means, like for us, we believe it's been a mutually beneficial relationship with Reach, so that Reach has also built capacity in certain areas. But Eric and I have learned a lot from Reach, right? And so can you measure whether there's true capacity building? And then, you know, I think Jamal also mentioned earlier, and I think this would apply, is to measure whether the voice of the community is really being included. And I'm trying to think of a way that you could easily measure that. But there's like, I can give you an example of what's not. Maybe that will help frame the question. So we were aware of an application from other organizations where, for example, a large for-profit organization operating out of state, they're doing a project in Portland, involved a local group in Washington County, and they put their name all over the application. And if you saw the cover sheet of the application, you would have thought it was like a co-development. And the other organization was getting a small office space in the development. And that was it. No funding, no capacity building, no real voice in the project. So that's an extreme example of what I'm not talking about. Right? So, you know, there's got to be ways to say, like, if you really want to include a community group and the community that they're a part of, how is their voice being really measured in the project? I don't think we have time today in this webinar, but Erica could tell you and Alma on our projects all of the ways that the Latino community in Washington County and the Somali community have influenced the design, have influenced choices we've made about the development. And so I don't think we're going to have a ton of time to go into that, but those are some things I would say.
I just want to piggyback off what you said, Nathan, because I think the biggest point that you're pointing out is it's different when you go partner with another CDC who's in development and knows what, you know, what even Steven kind of looks like. And it's completely different when you approach a partner like Jamal's community, you know, nonprofit. They don't know. They come back after the fact and have conversations with me. Well, this is what they offered me. I have no idea. They don't know this world. So, you know, they don't understand the points that they're giving to them. They don't understand that they should be in a much better position. They don't understand that they even have the right to talk about what their organization needs are to the developers, right? And they're not being asked in that transparent way.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. That was great. Wish we had more time. I know we're over, but I want to give each person, each panelist I don't know, one sentence, last thoughts you want to share with our audience here?
Yeah, I want to say if your job is working for nonprofit or foundations and giving back to the society, you're blessed to have that job. So keep that job. One thing I would definitely, I wear a couple of different hats. I work for Nike, of course, as a corporate American, and I work for AYCO. At the same time, when I'm here serving the community, I feel like I'm blessed. I feel like I contribute something bigger and greater than myself. So that look into those believers, in any religion. I think giving back to the society and uplifting about individuals who's really struggling and need help is the key of success, to all of us. So keep it up, and thank you for your time.
I just want to add one thing around, we sort of touched on the importance of community development corporations. I want to highlight how important it is to support and to fund local, and I mean local, nonprofit community development corporations. They are ground up, bottom up organizations that understand what's happening in the community where they are, like Nathan is begging the funders to recognize, wanting to partner with local community and stakeholders and understand the need on the ground rather than have it be a checkbox. And that a lot of times you get from out of state or for-profit developers who are, you heard, it becomes transactional rather than community centered. And that is the difference. And I just want to highlight that.
I think the last thing I want to say to everybody is just the part that we didn't get to talk about, which is how Reach and Bienestar also developed a partnership to try and help support more Latinos learn development by shadowing their developers and get into this world of development, because it's hard. It's really hard to break into, and since I've been in it, I don't see very many people of color at all, but I see people making decisions for them every single day. So thank you.
I just want to say thank you to the panel. It's been really nice to get to listen and to get to partner with these organizations. And I just feel really honored to get to do this work every day. So thank you for letting me participate. And thank you, Bienestar and AYCO, for taking time to be a part of this panel. I think we are a richer organization because of your participation. So thanks.
Thank you. Igualmente. Thanks very much.
Thank you to the panelists and all this authentic conversation. I feel like we need a part 2. We didn't get to all the questions that we wanted, but thank you again for joining us, folks. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you for everyone just listening in, funders, staff, loved ones, board members. Thank you. And then also, to the audience, get involved, donate, and also advocate. We really need folks to get involved in our organizations and engage at all the levels. Whatever you can give, we appreciate. And it is about advocating in your neighborhoods locally as well. And your voices definitely want to be heard. So we appreciate you today. Hope you join us for the next one and have a good rest of your day. Thanks.